Welcome back to another episode of the Average Pastor Podcast. I'm Mark, here with my average pastor friends. Sorry to insult you that way. Yeah. Jeff and Jake. Is that a compliment?
It's not an insult.
No. It's not. It's a badge of honor. So this is our...
It might even be generous.
Yeah.
We made it up to average. I don't know.
Oh, man. And if you could have heard the off mic conversation, it would have been secured in your minds. These guys are so average. We took a little break. We came back. We had a fun little postscript conversation.
Ate some pastries.
Had some arguments. It was great. No, it's fun. This podcast is the somewhat filtered version of our conversations.
Not much.
But we're back, and I'm excited to talk with you guys today because we got a bunch of questions that we're going to get to. First, this is our 1-year anniversary episode. We talked about it last episode. We ate some pastries, and so I think, but this is the official 1 year.
Nice.
So, yep.
Happy birthday, guys.
Happy birthday.
Any guesses on what our most listened to episode out of all of them is?
The AI one?
Yep.
Is it AI?
Not by a ton, but that was
Which
it.
was
wow.
Interesting.
Also our longest episode.
The
So let's
least
just keep going on.
informative.
Yeah. What about the politics one? Was that?
Yeah. It's up there, but
Yeah.
not quite.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We need to talk about more things that we actually don't know very much about.
Well,
That's perfect. We got questions from our listeners.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
I did learn this lesson back when I was 31 years old. I had a blog and I had, 31. Like I didn't have all the answers, but I had most of them.
Yeah, you did.
I had most of them.
I was there. You did.
I was a big deal back at 31. And so I'm still, Jesus is still making me average. Average is both a thing I have attained and a thing I'm pursuing. I have not yet attained this goal of being average. But back then I was a little above average, had lots of opinions, had a blog. And I had these, a lot of strong opinions about
the Metro Puritan.
The Metro
I'll
Puritan
bet they can
blog.
still go on and find it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's still out there. And I learned this lesson because you could see like what, the analytics of you could see what people read and how many hits you had. And I wasn't I was just writing it as like a journal. And then I discovered that I'm curious. And I had this one post that was about school choice, like homeschooling. Uh-huh. And I had I wouldn't even say what I said about it, but it was like a playground fight broke out in the comments and on the thing. And like the readership shot up. There were like 14,000, hits and people from different states, like from all over the world, chiming in on school choice. And what I learned was controversy equals platform equals, you get to get people talking. And I was like, oh, wow, this is how the news works.
That's
what goes on. And so you learn that if you want to get people listening, controversies away. So does that track with the AI thing? That there was a little tension in what we were talking about? Maybe.
It makes it very interesting to listen to when there's disagreement. And that was actually some of the comments we got on that. It was good to hear how to disagree on something.
Especially when you don't really know much about what you're talking about.
The stakes are low.
Yes. I was shocked at how many questions we got. They were rolling in. In fact, there were so many. You're like, I didn't even include these ones that just came in because we won't have time for it.
Yeah, people have been using the email address, averagepastorpodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, we got a lot of
Even though that takes
questions.
a really long time to type that in.
You got to want it.
You got to really want it.
You got to want
That's
it.
a lot of letters.
We don't want to be just inundated with questions. So
We don't even know.
lengthen that email address.
We don't even know how many we're missing because people are mistyping.
Misspelling.
I know. They got halfway through and they're
I
just
bet
like,
there's a lot that have gone.
I'll just
Most
chat
of them.
GPT this question.
All the average typers out there.
Okay, let's shoot.
Average
What do we?
type.
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Okay, first question is from Josh. He says, I am a public school teacher, and sometimes I'm tasked with teaching subjects I don't necessarily agree with, and I'm supposed to share viewpoints I don't agree with. I love my job, but how do I navigate this environment with biblical values?
I was talking to a science teacher in like high school biology, 9th grade biology teacher, and just asking about evolution. So say you are the biology teacher and you're having to teach that. And how do you navigate that? So I don't know what grade and what specific things, but yeah, I think you have a obligation as a teacher to never lie, never tell a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And never indoctrinate young children or your students at any age with lies. So I think, for example, with evolution, if you're teaching it, I think you could talk about it as the theory of evolution. There's ways to talk about things that, hey, this is how some people think. Like some people think that there are countless genders and this is what they think. Some people think that there are 2 genders, people, do you know what I mean? I think there would be a way to talk about it that you're not presenting it as this is what it is and how you should think.
Well, and a good educator would bring people to the idea of presuppositions, right? So even if you're in the hard sciences, biology or whatever, to be able to say, hey, we all build on presuppositions, but boy, we've got to have some humility there because sometimes those presuppositions get more recently, maybe more with astronomy and physics and stuff like that. The Big Bang theory is now, kind of contested far more than even a few years ago. To be able to say, well, even under the umbrella of our science, hey, be careful that you don't. We should always be questioning some of the underpinnings of these things. Which I do that in theology class, right?
That's
and I think in good education, it's different than indoctrination where it's like you want to help people think.
Yes.
So rather than straw manning the other side, how do you steel man? Like, hey, this is the best representation of this view. This is the best and then you can feel like these are the strengths and weaknesses, whether it's in theology where it's like, hey, some people believe this, some people believe this, and try to best represent those perspectives. But I would also feel an obligation, like I tend to fall here because of these reasons.
Totally.
Yeah.
I saw this come out in some curriculum that I saw some homeschool curriculum where it was like whitewashing American history that we all know. Thomas Jefferson was one of the first great Christian founders of our nation. And I'm like, wait, what?
We got a lot of history in this one.
I mean, I've read biographies and a lot of, that's a pretty hot take. So I think as an educator, that's not being honest about history either. So I think that to your point, like that could go either way. Like there's danger in just, I'm just going to only share the Christianized side of something. And I think it's good. That's a really good point of you could bring, hey, this is the scientific method, and ask them, like, when people make this claim about you can be any gender, is that a scientific claim? No, it's like a worldview claim, so I think there's ways to, even as you're talking about hard topics that you have to address, there's ways to,
in honesty, back to your, don't speak lies. Yeah. you can be bold and honest and still fair to represent views that you don't agree with, because that's your job, maybe in whatever. You know what I mean?
If you get fired over that, I would just say, have the courage to be fired. I think you have
Right.
to, as a public school
Yeah.
teacher, you have to leave that possibility in the realm of like, when you go into this, you have to know I'm refuse to tell a lie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Might get me fired.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, next question is from a guy named Mac. I think he goes to your church, Jake, maybe.
Mac, yeah.
He had some questions about holidays. So he asked about Santa. I think maybe we should save that for a Christmas episode.
Mac's a longtime listener, so give a shout out to Mac.
All
Hey,
right.
Mac.
Way to go, Mac.
Nice work, Mac.
But we're coming up right on Halloween. Thoughts on celebrating Halloween? Mac also mentioned he is half Mexican, and Dia de los Muertos is a big deal in that culture where they remember family members, and even, he's saying there's you set up kind of an altar of sorts. You put their favorite foods on them, and there's this belief that the spirits of your ancestors come back. So he's kind of wondering, in his culture, how do I walk faithfully as a Christian? He doesn't want to offend Jesus in anything that he does, but he also wants to honor his mother who recently passed. And so, two-part question: Halloween in general, but then to Mac, how would you shepherd him?
I think there can be a fear in a lot of evangelical circles where it's like, I so don't want to be one of those crazy fundamentalists that we may lose some discernment. In my experience, the hearing testimonies of people that were involved in the occult, or some Mexican brothers and sisters that they're like, no, like that, there's an evil there. And then sometimes, like white Midwesterners, like, it's no big deal. And I think that we do need to recognize, hey, it is a holiday that can make light about some real evil, and be cautious in that. But there's also a perspective of, okay, this is a great chance to meet my neighbors and interact with my community. That doesn't mean I'm going to let my kid be Satan for Halloween. Right? So I think I'm not the one that says don't do Halloween, but I would say don't fully do Halloween and be very discerning in how you do Halloween.
The more secular our culture becomes, I'm noticing this all over. I notice in our neighborhood, it is amazing. It's like the new Christmas.
It is. The decorations and the all out for Halloween is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's like it's like kind of it's like become like the atheist national holiday,
Yeah.
like there is a secular, and I would say
That's April Fool's Day.
Oh,
A fool says in his heart, there is no God.
Yeah, that's April 1st. Okay.
Good call.
So I do
Jake.
think that there is you can't be unaware of like satanic influence. I think I'm trying to think of how to, because I mean, if you're coming out of Indian culture, maybe you're, I know some Indian friends where the older generation is like, Diwali, absolutely. We're not going to celebrate this Hindu gods and what they did, whatever. It's, we're not going to do that. Like Christians in India do not celebrate this thing. And like some of the more like newer Christian,
Or second,
third generation, maybe they're probably more indifferent to it, or they'll go over to a friend's house and celebrate it.
Some of it might just come down to a weaker and stronger brother issue too. Like when you were talking about people that came out of that background, you just talked about the Indian background, that let's defer to Christians who are seriously wounded in conscience over some of this stuff, But if you really, back to your point even about neighbors, if in your good conscience, you can go meet the neighbors and give the neighbor kids candy and nobody's imagining for a moment that you are a Satan worshiper because of it, and your conscience is okay with it.
What can you explain what you mean to Mac or somebody who's listening that doesn't understand when you just said weaker brother issues? Can you give a quick to somebody who doesn't know that part of the Bible, like right. where they could find it, and then what you're referring to there?
Yeah. So the weaker, is it 1 Corinthians 7? No, 1 Corinthians
14?
Yeah, the weaker brother passages.
James. Here's three pastors over here.
It's
I think it's
Romans
Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians.
I think it's 8.
8.
9. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. Food
all that to
sacrificed
say-
to idols, it's 8 through 10.
So all that to say, the weaker brother would be somebody who, in that particular context, came out of idolatry, and so if all of a sudden they used to go to such and such a temple and had to take meat sacrificed to the temple, and now you go to your Christian brother's home or somebody else's home, and that particular meat is now being offered because they would sell it out the back door of these temples. Now all of a sudden it's there, and you're like, I can't eat that. That's been sacrificed, and it had been part of your worldview, part of your dark spiritual history. You wouldn't be able to eat. And Paul's commendation is, hey, defer to that brother and don't eat it either, because he might not yet understand that there are no such things as idols. They're empty. But he might not get that yet. He's not mature enough. So defer to him until he can have a stronger conscience in Jesus. So I'm just saying, if there are people that come immediately out of a hyper spiritual kind of, connection, defer to him.
In one of the contexts, I think it's in chapter 8, he's talking about that situation you're eating. Someone says, hey, this ground beef, it was on sale from the temple of Artemis, He's like, and that they have a weak conscience, like don't eat it at the, but later, and I think it's chapter 10, where he seems to be saying the opposite thing, like never do that. And it's in the context of going to the temple, where he's like, no. You don't go to the temple and eat this food sacrificed to idols there. Like, so there's a contextualization too, where I would say to Mac, that the situation might matter if there's a parallel there. I was thinking too, if you're a mom, I have seen this, like there is a whole, like, I think mother fear industry, there's a lot of money to be made off of moms wanting to do everything the right way. And I think there's a Christian version of this where you could I have seen this, play out with like the previous generations, like, well, our kids, like, we won't let them read Harry Potter. We'll never let them have like these whatever trading cards or Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And you can have opinions about that, but I think sometimes that fear can, if you give it too much power, we have taken the route of in our family, like, oh yeah, there's no power in that. Like that has no, just, you can read it but this is what's true. It doesn't have it. There's no like spiritual, like demons coming off the pages that are gonna, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we've taken more of an approach of teaching our kids, like Halloween, there's no, now, if you see things that are explicitly like demonic or whatever, I think you should avoid it. Like in the Dia de los Muertos.
Dia de los Muertos.
The
Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead. If it comes down to like sacrificing to a dead relative,
or even communicating with them. I mean, I do think that's where I would take the harder stand. That wouldn't be disputable. I mean, it's appointed a man once to die, and after that, the judgment. Like if that particular holiday or tradition caused you to try to communicate with the dead or help them out in some way, bridge that gulf between us and them, I would say no. There's like a harder line there.
The Witch of Endor.
Yeah, totally.
For, trying to, that Saul went to try to,
be careful. Yep.
Yeah, be careful with that.
Yeah. Cool.
Did you guys do trick-or-treating? Your kids?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did.
Any regrets on costumes or anything? Any misses?
Well, our kids, they didn't get costumes new every year, so it's like, hey, whatever your sister was, that's what you're. But
which was hard for your son, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's
just kidding. Keep going.
Rudy, our younger, when she was really little, when we lived in Arizona, which Halloween Arizona was. Because it's it's like weather's starting to get nice, so everybody's outside,
nice.
bonfires in their garage. So she was a duck, but Johnny was Saul from Duck Hunters. She was a duck hunter. So that was
we had our kids. We had the same issue because Halloween costumes are expensive. We're like, there's no way we're spending. Back then, like $25.
The family
it wasn't much, but we made our kids, like, my kids are like, Dad, you're going to make us go as a hobo again? Because I would just give him an old flannel that's ratted out and just be like, you're a homeless guy.
And it was the same one they wore the year before.
For us, Halloween like always snuck up on us. I forget the decorations. Like, oh, is that today? And then you're like trying to scramble and give them a costume to wear.
Like a cardboard box put over their head. Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. Next question. This comes from Veritas, Iowa City's own Jacob Ryan.
What's up, Jacob?
It's probably a brilliant question then. I'm already afraid.
You should be. You should be. No, this is good. He said, Mark mentioned in a previous episode how Abraham Lincoln was sympathetic toward those who were raised in and around the institution of slavery. And the question, was how do we know we would have done anything different if we were in their same situation? So his question is, how do we as Christians guard ourselves from these blind spots? And in what ways might modern American Christianity and even our own churches be shown eventually to have been on the wrong side of history? Are there things happening right now that, in 100 years or more, we'll look back and be like, oh, actually, we were blind.
It was actually addressed to Mark, so I'm going to let him go. But I do want to say this, just to be clear, what Mark was saying about Abraham Lincoln is he was trying to be sympathetic to cultural worldviews that are our starting point. I want to be clear to everybody listening. Abraham Lincoln wasn't saying, I think maybe slavery is right. He was saying we get enculturated with these pressures that are wrong, but I'm more sympathetic to our Southern brothers who were raised with that, so they hadn't had an alternative to, right,
It's
Mark?
more-
I mean, I'm
yeah.
just saying, I just don't want to give the impression that Abraham Lincoln waffled at all on whether slavery was right
I take
or not.
it more as a statement of the depravity of man.
Right.
I could fall in those same sins if I was in that situation.
Yes.
If the roles were reversed, I would buy the same lie.
It's a very noble thing that he was saying, and so I don't want anybody to misunderstand.
He was trying to build a bridge to,
that we have those things in the north as well.
Yeah.
Which is back to Jacob's question, right? So anyway,
yeah.
Now to you.
Yeah.
Are there those that we have today?
That one thing that I've been reflecting on in the last episode, we talked about some of the political stuff, and I think we need to remember when we see like a horrific thing, and maybe it's done against people we love, and we could say, like, have a tendency to point, see, it's always coming from that side. We have to remember that sin is like Cain's murder of his brother Abel was not because he was a leftist or a rightist. Like he wasn't like a right wing or left wing. It's like that same anger that resides in that person resides in us. And at the same time that I was talking to a friend, Drew in Minneapolis, after, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, it was tricky for them because a few months before, in June, a right-wing guy who had connections with evangelical churches went on a shooting spree against Democratic lawmakers, like going house to house, like horrible things. I think to this question that as Christians, we can't fall into that. Like we don't see the world through primarily a political lens. We see it through a theological lens. And sin is to speak prophetically to the culture and not as a product of the culture. I think we have to see things in biblical theological categories. So to this question, like, I do think there are things that would be a caution against, hey, don't do that. Like when you see a news story, like it's all, maybe there is a ideology that it comes downstream from an ideology that is not good or evil or whatever. That may be the case, but I just think we have to, that thinking biblically, I think will be corrective. He's kind of asking too, like, what issues are there today that maybe we're blind to because we live in this? And I just want, you guys can riff on it, but
I mean, I might frame the question. I understand the question is kind of compared to the issue of slavery. Saying 100 years from now, what will we look back on? Takes the assumption that we're going to be better off in 100 years, and like, well, we're more enlightened. And look how I would say, when we're in eternity, what things would we look back and say, I can't believe we were okay with that,
Right.
from a Christian perspective.
So, and I would say totally huge amen. There's no qualifier to what you're just saying. But in this plane of existence right here, right now, that's why we need the Bible and community, right? That's so much of the central thread through Hebrews, but especially at the end of Hebrews 4. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold to our confession, right? So one, hold on to Christ. He's the only one, he's the only one that can truly. But just before that, he says this beautiful thing. The word of God is living and effective, sharper than a double-edged sword, penetrating as far as the separation of soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It's able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. No creature is hidden from him, but all things are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give an account. The thing that will shatter our worldviews that are very fortressed and well secured in us is the Bible, right?
Yeah.
That's why we have to keep preaching the Bible instead of political issues or whatever, is because the Bible pierces through and you're like, holy cow, something I thought was right all these years is actually wrong. Or something I thought was wrong is actually commended by God. And so we just got to preach the Bible, preach the Bible. That's the only thing that can shatter worldviews.
Right. And we're all under it. So it's like, we got to we have to have conversations around the Bible rather than just kind of drifting away from it. But I'd say the chapter right before that, in chapter 3, he's saying, take care, brothers, that you're not hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. And then he goes on, like, continue to encourage one another as long as it's called today. So I think one way to avoid self-deception is don't do life by yourself.
Man.
Because we all have blind spots. It's like, I couldn't see it, but other people see my blind spots. So
are there some things in your lifetime that you've been like, ooh, we were wrong on that one? When you talk about, because I think that's a good question to reflect on. What are the things though today? I think what got me on the little rant about how we see sin coming from one side or another. I think that we, in this cultural moment, will probably look back at like, oh wow, we need to be careful about how we interact with politics. I think we have to be Christians who, I don't know, that's just one thing. How I think that would be a concern because in my lifetime, I remember that I was the kid on the street corner with the abortion kills children. Every Saturday early in the morning we'd go, and I would be invited to, didn't go all the time, but to picket abortion clinics. Like that was part of our Christianity, was like, let's go out and vote for these people. And I would say that's kind of something reflecting on now. I'm like, I don't know that that's, even in my lifetime, like I look at that and I'm like, I don't know that that's the best, but maybe application of the gospel to mobilize the church to do that. But have you guys seen things even in your lifetime? Because my son, I found this old clip of this lady back interviewed in the late 70s, and she was born in like the late 1800s, and she was talking about life in 1890, something like that. She was like 101-year-old woman, and she was like, and I showed it to my son. I'm like, she lived before cars, before all this automobile, all this stuff, and her reflection on what life was like. Families were closer. It was all about relationships. People knew each other. And he's like, well, Dad, you lived before the internet and cell phone. And I was like, yeah, I did. What was life back then? Because I would say in that, one of the things, to Jacob's point, is I think we don't understand how our minds are being conformed to the world by social media and algorithms. I think that's
the cultural
probably,
influences.
yes, the cultural influence of how we think, and even our inability to read a book anymore because we're so used to
Yeah.
little sound bites. I think I think
true.
our minds are being shaped in ways we don't understand right now.
Mm.
There's a book called The Accidental Feminist that helps kind of like some ideologies are just like, that's just the air we breathe. Of course but it's like, is that what that movement was about? And like, you just grow up and you're influenced by things that, are more cultural than they are biblical. So there's probably a lot of those issues where it's just the air we breathe and we don't really think differently.
The Accidental Feminist sounds like a great premise for like a comedy. I'm going way back, like a Charlie Chaplin silent film called The Accidental Feminist. Really interesting.
I'd watch that.
You're gonna star in it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the premise is. It just sounds funny.
It does.
Yeah.
I was going to add something to that because I think this is one of the opportunities we have in this day and age is the ability to travel and to experience other cultures. And I mean, Jeff, you're in Zambia, every year. I got to go with you one time. And that experience, I feel like being able to get completely out of your culture and look back. I mean, yeah, that opened my eyes to so much of like, oh man. I mean, specifically greed was this blind spot. I'm like, wow, look at how these people are living that wouldn't have come to light having not experienced that. So
yeah,
Well,
even what we would call kind of socialism, and we have this aversion to socialism, and when you get there, and if one neighbor has a few extra kwacha and their other neighbors don't, their instinct is to give that away, and we'd be like, no, save it, because someday you're going to be the one that doesn't have a kwacha. Save, and we've got more of a, and I'm just saying, well, both those you could find traces of Bible to help you out, but overall you're like, wait, which is more virtuous, being a saver or giving away everything you have for your neighbor? You know what I mean? Like, so yes, it challenges your.
It's definitely James. I think what you're saying is probably the one that I would say. What's the blind spot you don't say? I think it's prosperity. Like even Jeff, if your dad could come and see
how
all that you had and how you live, and you probably grew up in I don't know,
very poor. I mean, I'm sorry, lower middle class. I don't want to say poor,
but back then, might have been a 1-car garage. Now it's like, like just. Through the idea of having a house, yours doesn't, but with a 3-car garage or whatever,
right.
It's just like the prosperity level. We live in so much more prosperity than even our parents,
Yeah.
For sure.
So
I did have a Stingray, but anyway, let's keep going.
The bike, not the car.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, let me make
For
sure
clarity.
the bicycle.
Next question comes from Jim, and his question was about Jesus and specifically his demeanor towards people. We see Jesus as a lamb going to the slaughter, forgiving his enemies, but then we also see him being righteously angry when he sees the money changers in the temple. And he's wondering, how do we reconcile this tension? And he's kind of wondering if it has something to do with who is being oppressed in the situation. Like, is the difference that, when Jesus is the victim of suffering, that he's meek and lowly, but then if he sees other people being victimized, that's when it's time to be righteously angry. Is that right? He's just wondering, what do you think? Is the principle that we forgive when we are hurt, but we respond in righteous anger when others are hurt?
Especially those who are unable to defend themselves, for sure. Yeah.
When I first saw that, Jim Gregory, and he put, Salt Company, 1993 to 98. Jim was in one of the first years of your leading
Yep.
Salt back in the mid late 90s, and Jim, we were together in one of your we were going through Grudem's systematic theology.
Yep.
Remember you had the
Yep.
life and doctrine, and
Dude.
one week we would talk about just character life issues, and the other on those offices on 6th Street.
That's right.
And Jim was in that. And I
was
remember Jim, like when I saw that question from Jim, I was definitely trembling because Jim's just smarter than me. He's a, like
Dude,
very
you're not
intelligent
gonna
engineer. I don't know what you're doing today, Jim, but thanks for the question.
And he's
yeah.
at Veritas Cedar Rapids.
Ah.
Anyway,
That's
sorry,
awesome.
Keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Jim, it seems like I agree with you. Like, just that it seems like Jesus does respond when it's a personal against you. You turn the other cheek, and Jeff, like you would add the amen to, and I'm curious, Jake, I'm trying to, this is the first time I'm really thinking about this question, but that tracks to me that you would, that a righteous anger would be used to protect vulnerable people. That's where I think with the abortion issue, like the Christian impulse is always to lean toward protecting the defenseless. And I think that's why the Bible talks about widows and orphans in their distress, because those are the most vulnerable people, and that, we have a responsibility to care for.
Yeah, I think it's that, and the righteous anger connected to not only maybe a defense of the helpless, but a defense of the truth. So even how Paul expressed some righteous anger addressing the Judaizers in Galatians, or Jesus expressed some righteous anger towards the Pharisees in debates on the truth, or the flipping of the tables. No, there was no widows or orphans involved in that situation. It was exploiting people who were trying to worship God, that's caused his expression of, or brought about his expression of frustration there. So a defense of the truth, I think, is a part of that.
Have you guys had righteous anger anytime recently?
So right before we started recording, I was talking about somebody that we all know and love. She was out, at home football games. If you live close enough to Kinnick, you are often there's hardly any parking. So you sell spots in your lawn for people to park, and it's just a thing in Iowa City, right? And she undercut a neighbor by $5 as she was advertising, come park in this lawn. And as a result, one of the neighbors came over and was just furious that her price was $5 less than him. And as a result, ended up getting so outraged that he threw his alcoholic drink, ice and all, at her and just, splatted her all over. Well, in that moment, okay, so I think this is a great test for this. Had I been the one to receive the cup of alcohol, I think the right thing would have been to turn around and let it happen. And, but if I had been around when our friend Holly was splashed, I promise you, I don't care how big or small, I'm an old, small guy. I promise you I would have put myself between her and him, because I was outraged days later just hearing the story.
But your application was to talk to Holly and tell it, like, even though you weren't there, you still did follow up to defend her in a way.
Yeah. And said, Holly, you're a strong person. You don't need me to defend your word. I'm just saying, I don't care how strong you are. That's humiliating. That's such an insulting, humiliating moment. And you're alone in that moment. Nobody deserves that. And there is no justification. I don't care if there's another. Don't tell me why. Nope. Over the line. And I'm just, so anyway, I think that'd be an example of a time that if it had happened to me, I'd have one result. If I'm seeing it done to somebody else that is defenseless, I would.
Do you have any examples of being righteous anger recently?
I think when you see the truth being undermined, or sin that's being embraced, with a shepherd's heart that's like, I want us to see this is not right, can be expressed in a sermon in a jolting way.
I was thinking about that. Recently the social media influencers that are like pseudo pastors or shepherds or claiming to be like spiritual, I think, leaders, just how our people are being shaped by social media, and people that came out and, hey, if your pastor doesn't do this week, you need to find a different church. And then speaking to pastors, I got this basically texted to me. Someone's like, hey, what do you think of this? And it's a guy saying, pastors, you need to be in the pulpit, whatever you're doing this week, you need to set it aside and you need to preach on this political thing and don't be gentle, like say it like it is, and it's just, that is like, it made me so angry because I read Timothy, I read Titus, the pastoral epistles, and he's saying, don't be quarrelsome, don't get in arguments about words. The Lord's servant is to be patient and kind. And, I just think not quarrelsome. That's a qualification of
Patient
leadership.
when wrong.
Patient. Yeah. And so I just feel like that is an example of,
yeah.
And the impulse could be to want to throw something in the comment section, which not, is not going to do anything. But anyway, you feel like wrong is being done. It's being done to people by how they're influenced by, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Scarlett about Bible translations. When to use which translation, what's your personal favorite, and even maybe which ones to avoid.
Jake. Because we think different. I mean, no, we don't necessarily think differently. We've made different choices.
Yeah, we used to
made different choices. Yeah,
we use the ESV. When it comes to Bible translations on a spectrum, there's some that work for word translation and an idea for an idea translation, and then they run the gamut in between. So if like an NASB or an ESV is more of a word for word translation, and then you on the other end you have like the New Living Bible, which would be like
the Message. Those kind,
yeah. And I don't know if I'd call the Message a translation, as much of a paraphrase, but it'd be like a New Living translate, like it's more idea for idea. NIV's kind of in the middle. I think I would say this CSB is kind of in between ESV and NIV and that spectrum of that idea. So as far as which translation is better, I mean, I think that there's for what, like for what purposes. I mean, if you're trying to study, I might pick something different than if you're just readability. So
yeah, I think that's the big thing right there, because another church and a pastor I deeply respect, they've just made recently the decision to go to the NASB 95 or not NASB. Is that the 95? Anyway, the NASB is even more difficult to read than the ESV, because the tighter you try to get to just match Hebrew and Greek, which both have different grammars and both have different vocabulary. And so you're trying to match them into English now in the receiving language, word for word. It becomes very clunky, especially grammar. Grammar becomes very clunky. So when you go to read it out loud, it's hard because we don't talk like that. We don't, people aren't accustomed. So for public preaching, that's why I like the CSB. I don't think it compromises the Hebrew and Greek, but it has more work done on smoothing out the English.
Sure.
Whereas ESV would say, and respectfully, they're kind of first cousins in a way, because ESV would say, well, for those choices, we'd rather deal with a little bit more clunky grammar, but hold tighter to the Greek and Hebrew. So I respect that, but I'm saying like public reading and understanding, I tend to go to CSB.
And I would probably caution people on translation snobbery.
Yeah.
Like unless you're reading the original languages.
Yeah.
Even like on the more word for word translation, there's still like, you might miss an idea because of the word for word translation. That's why even people that preach out of the ESV might say, okay, literally that means this. And it's like, we don't even know what that means. yeah, that's why they translated it this word. So
Right.
when you're doing the work of translation, you're still trying to.
It's hard
make
because
sense
it's
of-
in translation. It's called dynamic equivalence. When you're trying to figure out this Greek, if we do it word for word, it won't make any sense. Like, what's the dynamic equivalence? What's the way to make that, to say that in this way that could be understandable? And so I think if someone's saying, well, I want the most word for word one, well, that might not, that actually, to your point, I think that's where the snobbery thing, like the thing that has never made sense to me is the King James only version people. Like, that's one, I just don't have a lot of,
No, because the King James, even when it was written, was hard to understand because it was the formal, like Elizabethan, like Shakespearean type English. Well, nobody spoke that way on the street. You know, it'd be the same choice that God made with the New Testament. There was classical Greek available, and then there was Koine Greek, the kind of Greek you speak on the street. God chose for his New Testament to be in Koine Greek, like simple street language Greek, and didn't use the more formal written academic Greek. So I'm just saying that that's the same thing. We want it to be understandable. We want people to be able to engage with these thoughts or whatever. And the King James was difficult back then. It's almost impossible to read now, you know.
If you were to, so one of the things I have most scripture memorized in, like, some of the early stuff was NASB. I still have like certain passages memorized in the NASB. Paul, Philippians 4, let your forbearing spirit be evident to all the Lord is near. Like, but NIV, I have most of what I have memorized is in the NIV. It was the 84 one, and it's stayed pretty similar since then. I'm always conflicted because I like it as a, just for reading. It's like probably the easiest to read, but it's not like it. Yeah, like you said. I mean, ESV is going to be a better one to probably study out of. I guess I'm conflicted on when my kid just recently asked me, like, Dad, what version should I use? Because I probably, and I think I said to him CSB because it's for the read. But my beef with the CSB is how often they change it. I feel like
thankfully they've slowed that down. Yes, when it first it was the HCSB, then it became the CSB, but then they even renewed the CSB. So even what you might have in print was different electronically because they were updating it. And I do think they've, slowed their roll on the updates. But the reason for that is because the English language is changing all the time too. It's not just because they're trying to. We've got a living language that keeps developing.
What do you think about where it's not necessarily motivated by a language change, but by a cultural change?
Yeah.
So like NIV post 85 and other translations, they go more gender neutral when it's like, no, it says men and you made it people.
Right.
It's not like that bothers me where it's like, you didn't make a language translation. You made a cultural translation.
Yeah, that's hard because our language, I mean, like when they say brothers, like it's like when we say you guys.
Yeah.
Like we don't mean you men. We mean y'all. You all. And
that's
so
why
that's
on
a
that particular one, the CSB does choose brothers and sisters because it's clear that it's to be for all.
Jake's saying,
but are you saying more like when it's specifically men, like for instance, 1 Timothy 3 or something on the qualification? Is that what you're talking about more?
Certainly I don't like that when they make something that's gender specific, gender neutral. I can better understand, hey, you're trying to get the idea. They're talking about you guys. It includes brothers and sisters. I still don't like that.
Sure.
In the sense of like the cultural thing. It's like, no, just like today we say you guys means everybody. It seems like this more pushback against the patriarchy. And it's like, well, that's what it means. That's what it says. I think that's more of a cultural reaction.
That's the difference. Or would they have understood that when we say you guys to a mixed group,
yeah,
right, that it's just known we mean guys and gals.
Right.
That's what the CSB people are saying, is that no, it didn't just mean guys. It was a euphemism. And so now we need to bring that euphemism to bear in our.
And I say we don't, because people still know what it means. But it's this pressure, I would say a pressure of like, you're representing men and not women. I'm like, no, we're not. Nobody at the time would have thought that. Nobody at our time. We said, hey, you guys, that's what it means. So I feel like that's more of a cultural motivated interpretation, even though it may be fair. I don't like it.
So that's where I love this, because this is the exact tension of the translator rooms. Like, why can't they make it, it
is totally.
Yeah.
Because there's as much of an art to this as there is a science. And which is why, again, so, what they do is they start with the Greek and Hebrew scholars, then it goes to the English scholars, most of them at least, goes back and forth. You know what I mean? Because they're trying to say one group of scholars has their eye more on the English receiving language. One group of scholars has their eye more. They're both conversant in both. And these are the battles that you have to try to iron out.
My advice, just this Sunday, I was asked by a woman in our church, like, asking me some hermeneutics questions, like Bible interpretation. Now, how do you do that? And it came back to, I was like, okay, I think that you should just get a good study Bible. And I think the ESV study Bible is a great one. What is it? Would you guys agree with that?
The
like,
NIV study Bible is a really good study Bible too, but I don't like the translation as much. But I'm saying the notes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both
Yeah,
the ESV is great.
Yeah.
Totally. For sure. Yeah.
Nice.
Just read the Bible.
Read the Bible.
Nice. Okay, we might. This will be our last one, I think. So this is from Jess about the resurgence in Catholicism that she's seeing.
Oh,
She
man.
says, "Can you guys speak on the resurgence in Catholicism that is happening, particularly with young people and some prominent figures in the media? What do you think it is about? What do you think it is about Catholicism that is appealing to so many? Do you think it's overall good, bad, or neutral?"
Bad.
Can you speak to that?
All right, we're good.
All right.
That's our show.
Okay.
I think
What is
We were just talking about Halloween. Can we talk about Reformation Day? Can we talk about what started the Reformation? But anyway.
I don't know if it's, again, I don't know statistics about, is there a surge in this happening among young people? But I remember when I was younger at Moody, it was cool to go to the Greek Orthodox Church. Like, that's where I think there's this craving for transcendence.
Yes.
And especially we've come out of a seeker-sensitive movement that was very intentional about trying to tear down the wall between everyday life and church. And I think there's maybe that tasted the emptiness of this. It's like, I want something different than my everyday life. I'm trying to encounter God. And in doing so, people might feel like traditionalism or candles or just tradition of systems helps them scratch that itch. But also, I think with the number of, or the amount of instability in our world and in families, like mom and dad didn't stay together, this world's chaos. What organization has been solid for a long period of time? Catholics, Orthodox. Okay, there's stability there, so that may be.
I want to connect. Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're right to talk about the seeker movement, and people like, wait, we don't pass offering plates, we don't have crosses on our buildings, we don't, and it feels like,
I want to go to church.
I want to go to church. Like, I want to see the cross. I want that. And then what you get is a sense of transcendence. Jeff, can you speak to when you say, like, what, for someone who is drawn to Catholicism, what would your caution be? Like, if you were to talk about just your concern doctrinally with it.
Yeah. If people had been watching and just not just listening, they would have seen me nod vigorously for what Jake was saying. I think take that portion and focus on it, because I totally agree. It's that transcendence thing that is drawing people. The problem is, let me just speak directly to Roman Catholicism. It's false teaching. It has a false gospel. That this isn't an accusation. I'm saying, like, Father Mike has one of the most widely listened to podcasts. He's very clear on what Roman Catholicism teaches. I was listening to it every day. I was listening to his everyday things because I find him intriguing, and he's speaking Catholicism. Listen to what he says about salvation. Listen to what he says about infant baptism. Listen to what he says about what happens at communion. Listen to what I'm just saying. I don't. You don't have to take it from me. Like, take it from the Vatican. Take it.
I remember reading an article from a Catholic publication, and the title of the article was "Jesus did his 99%." Well, that's heresy.
So my thing is, if you want, of course, it's beautiful. Long for a mystical, beautiful, transcendent experience with Jesus Christ. It shouldn't just be head knowledge or just behavioral modification or whatever. If you want to experience the fullness of a walk with God, yes, seek that, but don't compromise doctrine. Don't go to a church that's not going to teach you the purity of the gospel of Jesus Christ in order to imagine that, because whatever that transcendence is, it's not gospel rich.
Do you think, and this may be a good conversation for another podcast, but do you think that there's a lesson for us to learn as coming out of that seeker movement of, hey, we do want to offer something different than the world in a transcendent experience? Or is that like, no, it's not in the cross on the wall and the candles and the, that's different? Or should there be a way that we do church that presents itself practically very different than the world?
So I think some of our, like, I would be careful to not overplay we're doing what we do because we're influenced by the seeker model of, because I think it's more influenced by the Puritans, by the simplicity, their response to the pageantry and over the,
Amen. Can we have 60-minute sermons back then?
Yeah. And I would just say one thing. I was going back to my notes on, so this, like, the simplicity of the pulpit, the preaching of the word, those are a lot of what we're doing in church is a response to, from the Reformation. One example, because doctrinally specifically, when I was doing the communion, in the Roman Catholic, in the church, in the Eucharist, the priest says, this is my body broken for you, and they do this part. The bread actually becomes a body. It's this was interesting. It's the ex opere operato. It's by the work performed. So it's the power of communion, and the power of is basically it's the activity done by the priest to the people. It's not the faith in the people. So, like, when you go to Mass and you participate in the Eucharist, it doesn't even matter if you have faith.
Yeah. You accidentally did it. You got the grace.
Right. Yeah. You got the grace just by participating. I think that's an example of...
We were just talking about Halloween again. Even the phrase abracadabra that is used about witchcraft now today, is from the Latin that the priests speak over the host, the body and blood of Christ, to make it transform for the. So I'm just saying it's isn't it? So if you want mystical, you're going to get mystical. Yeah. I'm just saying it's not the gospel, though. It's taking you away from the gospel. So it's okay to aspire to transcendence. It's obviously, but I just want to say, I have transcendent experiences every single Sunday as we worship Jesus, and then as the word pierces my soul like a dagger and lays me open before the eyes of him to whom I must give an account. Those are transcendent experiences. Now, it can also be enhanced with lighting, candles, even especially when you get into Eastern Orthodox, the incense, the olfactory. So I'm just saying, of course, there are other ways that you can, help a transcendent experience, but central is the preaching of the word and worship toward Jesus Christ.
And that's why I think I'm cautious about that. And I would totally agree. Like, yes, the simplicity that we see in the Puritan movement, because I'm very much like, I don't want to fall into an emotional manipulation with lights and fog.
Right.
Well, there's another side of emotional manipulation with candles,
Yeah,
and stained glass
dude.
windows, and chants, and
Wow.
so we need to be cautious on both.
Huh. I remember doing church history, the Greek Orthodox Church and the iconoclast controversy, but they have the pictures and, you know, that they're sacred pictures and artwork. And I'm like, it's funny to think of that as emotional manipulation because I'm like, man, you guys could get better art.
A positive thing is in a lot of, if you
old.
don't pay attention to anything they're saying and just look at all their pictures, you may get the gospel. Because it does kind of follow, in some churches follows.
Unless you're in a Roman Catholic one where Mary is the one with her foot on the snake, you know? So, I mean, but I also, I've got dear friends that are now Anglican, and I always encourage them to just be honest. I'm cool with you being in an evangelical Anglican church. That's cool. Do that. But just admit that the Anglican church started because Henry VIII wanted to off his wives and made the Pope mad. So he became the head of the Church of England, in which he is still today. The king is the head of the Church of England.
Just for clarity, that's a bad way to start a church.
I know, right? I'm like, let's just look. If you want to do it, fine, but don't pretend like this goes back to the apostles and this is the pure church and that even came about because of a strong way to reform no, it was because the Pope wouldn't let him off his wife, you know. So
that's anyway, let's revisionist history there.
A little revisionist history.
Yeah. Okay, let's end with this as we close our time. I want you guys, this would be an appropriate way to end. Like, just give us the gospel as we go. Just speak, in your, best in the moment gospel over me, over us, over anyone listening. As we close, I'll start, and just to give you time to think. This weekend I'm preaching tonight or tomorrow night. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And so the good news is that we are not loved by our performance. Our love is not earned. It is received. And we don't have to do better, be better, try harder. We can just receive God's love that comes through Christ and the cross. His grace is enough. And let's receive that and walk in it.
Yeah, the very first message that came from Jesus' mouth, here's the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent and believe this good news. So it comes to, what are we going to do with the truth of Jesus Christ? Are we going to repent from what we've thought, what we've done, what we've believed? And are we going to embrace, believe, have faith and trust in Jesus Christ?
Amen.
That is what we need.
Yeah. Amen.
I mean, I just come back to maybe a little bit simplified, technical look at it of, when Paul's talking about of what is of first importance, and according to scriptures that Christ died. I think that I go back to the acronym of PAIR, that it was a plan, according to scriptures from the beginning of time. This was God's plan. It was an event in history. Christ died. It was an achievement that he died for sinners, accomplishing our redemption. It demands a response from us in faith, and I put 2 R's on it, and it's about reconciliation, that we would be reconciled back to God. And that's, to me, that's the heart of God. And I think that's the heart of the gospel.
Wow. Let's see if I can do that. PAIR.
It was a plan,
achievement,
event.
Oh.
You got to spell
this
PAIR
really
first.
depends on your spelling, which is
PARE.
And we stack the words that makes the shape of a pear. That's why.
Wait, I'm going to get this.
Pair with 2 R's.
Is plan, event, achievement, response, reconciliation. Boom. Jake, misspelling pear and putting it on the bottom shelf.
Pear.
Roll the R's. Yes. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of The Average Podcast. Hopefully you got something good out of this, something to encourage you, keep you going. And send us your questions, Average Pastor
Podcast at gmail.com. You got to spell it right, though, or else we won't get it.
Have a great week, guys. Until next time, we'll see you.